On the 29th of January, this House gave me a clear mandate and sent an unequivocal message to the European Union. Last week, I took that message to Brussels. I met President Juncker, President Tusk, and the President of the European Parliament, Antonio Tajani, and I told them clearly what Parliament wanted in order to unite behind a withdrawal agreement, namely legally binding changes to the backstop. And I explained to them the three ways in which this can be achieved. First, the backstop could be replaced with alternative arrangements to avoid a hard border between Northern Ireland and Ireland. Yesterday, my Right Honourable friend, the Secretary of State for exiting the European Union, met with Michel Barnier to discuss the ideas put forward by the Alternative Arrangements Working Group, comprised of a number of my honourable and right honourable friends. I'm grateful to that group for their work, and we are continuing to explore their ideas. Secondly, there could be a legally binding time limit to the existing backstop. Or third, there could be a legally binding unilateral exit clause to that backstop. Given both sides agree we do not ever want to use the backstop, and that if we did it would be temporary, we believe it is reasonable to ask for legally binding changes to this effect. Mr. Speaker, as expected, President Juncker maintained the EU's position that they will not reopen the withdrawal agreement. And I set out the UK's position, strengthened by the mandate that this House gave me, that this House needs to see legally binding changes to the backstop, and that can be achieved by changes to the withdrawal agreement. We both agreed that our team should hold further talks to find a way forward, and he and I will meet again before the end of February to take stock of those discussions. So our work continues. The Secretary of State and the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster are today in Strasbourg, and last week the Attorney-General was in Dublin to meet his Irish counterpart. And following my own visits to Brussels, Northern Ireland and Ireland last week, I welcomed the Prime Minister of Malta to Downing Street yesterday, and I will be speaking to other EU27 leaders today and throughout the week. The Right Honourable Gentleman, the Leader of the Opposition, shares the concerns of this House on the backstop. I welcome his willingness to sit down and talk to me, and I look forward to continuing our discussions. Indeed, government ministers will be meeting with members of his team tomorrow. I think there are a number of areas where the whole House should be able to come together. In particular, I believe we have a shared determination across this House not to allow the UK leaving the EU to mean any lowering of standards in relation to workers' rights, environmental protections or health and safety. I have met trade unions and with members from across the House, and my Right Honourable friend, the Business Secretary, is leading work to ensure that we fully address all concerns about these vital issues. We've already made legally binding commitments to no regression in these areas if we were to enter the backstop, and we are prepared to consider legislating to give these commitments force in UK law. And in the interests of building support across the House, we're also prepared to commit to asking Parliament whether it wishes to follow suit whenever the EU changes its standards in these areas. And of course, we don't need to automatically follow EU standards in order to lead the way, as we have done in the past under both Conservative and Labour governments. The UK has a proud tradition of leading the way in workers' rights. The UK has a proud tradition of leading the way in workers' rights, whilst maintaining a flexible labour market that has helped deliver an employment rate almost 6 percentage points above the EU average. Successive governments of all parties have put in place standards that exceed the minimum set by the EU. A Labour government gave British workers annual leave and paid maternity leave entitlements well above that required by the European Union. A Conservative-led government went further than the EU by giving all employees the right to request flexible working. And I was proud to be the Minister for Women and Equalities to introduce shared parental leave so that both parents are able to take on caring responsibilities for their child, something no EU regulation provides for. When it comes to workers' rights, this Parliament has set a higher standard before, and I believe will do so in the future. Indeed, we already have plans to repeal the so-called Swedish derogation, which allows employers to pay their agency workers less, and we're committed to enforcing holiday pay for the most vulnerable workers. not just protecting workers' rights, but extending them. As I set out in my statement 2 weeks ago, the House also agrees that Parliament must have a much stronger and clearer role in the next phase of the negotiations. Because the political declaration cannot be legally binding and in some areas provides for a spectrum of outcomes, some members are understandably concerned that they cannot be sure precisely what future relationship it would lead to. By following through on our commitments and giving Parliament that bigger say in the mandate for the next phase, we are determined to address those concerns. The Secretary of State has written to all members of the Exiting the EU Committee, seeking their view on engaging Parliament in this next phase of negotiations, and we're also reaching out beyond this House to engage more deeply with businesses, civil society and trade unions. Everyone in this House knows that the vote for Brexit was not just about changing our relationship with the EU, but changing how things work at home, especially for those in communities who feel they have been left behind. Addressing this and widening opportunities is the mission of this government that I set out on my first day as Prime Minister. And I will continue to work with members across the House to do everything we can to help build a country that works for everyone.
Hi, I'm Joanna Bersecci and thank you for watching. You can check out more of our videos by clicking on the boxes on the screen. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more from CNBC International. Thank you for watching.